Cliff Richard finally tells the truth about George Harrison when he is 85 years old. Cliff Richard was born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940, in Lucknow, India. He became one of the most famous and loved names in British pop music history. After living in India, his family went back to England. Cliff, who was young at the time, lived through the hard times in Britain after World War II. He grew up in a simple home in Cheshire, Hertfordshire, and fell deeply in love with American rock and roll, especially the music of Elvis Presley and Little Richard. That love turned into the spark that turned a normal boy into one of the biggest rock stars in the UK. By the late 1950s, he was leading a cultural shift that brought rock and roll to Britain before the Beatles even came together. Cliff Richard's first song, Move It, made a big splash in 1958. A track now. A lot of people think it was the first real British rock and roll song. Move has raw guitar riffs and a fast-paced beat. Cliff became known as the UK's answer to Elvis Presley. He and his band, the Drifters, which they soon changed their name to the Shadows, became famous and started a new era in music. Cliff's smooth singing and the Shadows' brilliant playing on the instruments made a unique sound that would rule the charts for years. They had many hits together, such as Living Doll, Travelin' Light, Please Don't Tease, and The Young Ones. These songs all caught the feel of the 1960s teenagers and made Cliff a teen hero. The British invasion in the middle of the 1960s shocked the world, but Cliff Richard stayed popular and admired even as music styles changed. Cliff changed with the times, while many of his peers failed when the Beatles became popular. His clean-cut look and flexible voice let him sing everything from rock and roll to pop songs and even gospel. By the late 1960s, he was trying out a softer sound and having hits with songs like Congratulations, which he sang at the 1968 Eurovision Song Contest. They came in second place, but became an international favorite. One thing that made Cliff stand out was how long he lived. He was a star for a long time, not just for a short time. His fans grew with him over many years. During the 1970s and 1980s, Cliff Richard had a spectacular comeback. Many generations liked his songs, such as Devil Woman, We Don't Talk Anymore, and Dreaming. He stayed a regular on radio and TV, always changing who he was while staying true to his good, positive personality. He stood out because he could combine faith with showmanship. Cliff never counted on trouble or rebellion to stay in the news. Instead, his true love for music and his strong Christian faith kept him stable and earned him respect outside of the entertainment business. His decision to become a Christian in the mid-1960s changed his life in a big way, influenced his later work, including several gospel records, and gave him a moral compass that millions of fans around the world could relate to. Cliff has done a huge number of amazing things. He has been making music for more than 60 years, and has sold more than 250 million songs around the world. This makes him one of the most successful musicians of all time. He is the only singer to have had a top 5 hit in the UK in every decade, from the 1950s to the 2010s. This shows how versatile he is and how popular he still is. In 1995, he was made a knight, making him Sir Cliff Richard and the first rock star to be given this award. He has also won a huge number of awards, from the Ivor Novello Prize to the Brit Award, recognizing both his artistic achievements and the good things he has done for others. Cliff has been a symbol of hard work, commitment, and class, even beyond the charts and awards. A man who kept his good name in a field that was notorious for scandal and excess. As a person, Cliff Richard has stayed very private, even though he has been famous for decades. He never got married because he wanted to focus on his faith, his friends, and his singing. Many years ago, he split his time between homes in the UK, Barbados, and Portugal, where they live a quieter life when they're not playing. Fans and his friends both like him because he is humble and kind. People who have worked with him say that he is a true professional who is always on time, well-prepared, and polite to everyone on set or in the studio. Cliff is still full of energy and excitement even though he is getting older. He still goes on tour, records music, and talks to people all over the world. His events, which are full of memories, happiness, and deep thanks, show that he still loves what he does and values the people who support him, have helped him for many years. He doesn't just sing songs when he's on stage. He celebrates a life of songs and memories that millions of people have shared. In November 2013, Cliff Richard once again showed that the magic in his music had not worn off when he launched the Great Rock and Roll Songbook, a lively ode to the golden age that helped shape his amazing career in the first place. It was a nostalgic and upbeat collection of timeless rock classics that really got to the heart of the style that marked the early days of British pop. People old and new were thrilled to hear Cliff's unique voice bring famous hits by the pioneers who had inspired him to new life. The album's popularity was really impressive. It quickly became a gold record and went to number 7 on the UK Albums Chart, proving once again that Cliff Richard was one of the most loved artists. People who are still important in British music after more than 50 years in the spotlight. After 3 years, in 2016, Cliff released another upbeat project that was just great rock and roll. The music that made him famous was celebrated again on this record, which mixed a sense of youthful energy with the skill of a performer with a lot of experience. It had both new takes on songs and touching tributes to the late Elvis Presley. One of the most moving parts was a virtual duet with Presley, which made fans all over the world cry. Cliff's performance on the record showed how good he was. Durable fame. Even more, it went to number 4 on the UK Records chart and sold more than 100,000 copies across the country. There haven't been many artists in history who have been so successful over so many decades. But Cliff's voice will always be recognizable, and he truly loves what he does. Went on to shine. Cliff didn't seem to slow down in the years that followed. In 2018, he released Rise Up, his first record of original songs in almost 14 years. It was a great return to writing songs. The title of the record showed how strong he was and how he could deal with problems with grace and drive. Both fans and reviewers liked the joyful themes and lively sound, and it made it back into the UK Top 10. After this success, he made music, The Air That I Breathe in 2020, a beautifully put-together collection that showed how versatile he is and how much he cares about the songs he sings. In 2022, he released the heartwarming album Christmas with Cliff to enjoy the holidays. It mixed holiday cheer with his usual grace and sincerity. All of these albums show that Cliff Richard's music is loved by people of all ages. Being able to change while staying true to his roots has helped him stay successful. Music that is important, joyful, and current. He has been in the top 10 of the charts for more than 60 years, which is something that not many artists can say. Cliff's later albums not only paid tribute to the long past of rock and roll, but they also solidified his place in it, making him one of the most famous and influential performers of all time. In the history of modern music, Sir Cliff Richard has been one of Britain's favorite artists for many years, a singer who has been making music for over 60 years. He had a voice that spoke to generations and a personality that was full of warmth and ease. Became a sign of strength in a music business that is always changing. Cliff is now 85 years old and is looking back on his amazing life with more honesty and thought than ever before. He is especially thinking about his friendship with another British legend, George Harrison. They met at important times in the history of music. And the story Cliff. This story shows that their bond was much stronger and more complicated than most fans ever thought. George was one of the most quietly spiritual people I've ever met, Cliff said in a rare interview not long ago. He didn't say much about it, but you could tell he was thinking about it. That peace and quiet. Look for meaning that never went away. In the early 1960s, Cliff was already a big star, and the Beatles were just starting to become famous. Along with his band, The Shadows, Cliff had already helped start British rock and roll, making it possible for bands like the Beatles to come along. George, the quiet Beatle, praised Cliff's early success and how well he did his job. Cliff praised George's deep musical skill and humility, but he also said that their first meeting wasn't very exciting. The scene took place behind the scenes in Liverpool, and I remember thinking how shy George was. He didn't say much, but when he smiled, you could see a lot going on in his eyes. Over time, they became friends slowly, not because they were famous, but because they both respected art and faith. Each man thought a lot about himself. And, for Cliff, faith came from Christianity. For George, however, his path took him to Eastern philosophy and meditation. There were times when we talked about God in very different ways. Cliff said, "I was talking from a Christian point of view, and George was looking into Hinduism, but I think we both wanted the same thing: love, peace, and the truth." "Cliff, if your heart is right, all roads lead to the same place," he told me one time. That's something I'll never forget. Cliff said that these talks were some of the most important in his life. Even though people had different ideas, there was no argument or discussion. Nothing but respect and interest. There were big changes in both of their lives as their fame grew. Cliff kept up his long, clean-cut look by focusing on music that showed what he believed in, while George, through the Beatles, were one of the most important culture figures of the 20th century. Even so, Cliff always supported George's spiritual work. He said in a soft voice that some people didn't always get him. The people around him thought he was weird or trying to avoid fame, but he was really just looking for peace of mind. It's not often that you can find peace when everyone is calling your name. Cliff remembered clearly one night how they sometimes ran into each other at charity events and business meetings. In the corner of the room, he played the sitar for a small group of us, and I remember being completely taken aback. It was not about how well they did. It had to do with feelings. So much of what he said was deep and true. Cliff said that George's music changed the way he thought about his own work and made him want to make songs that were more personal and spiritual. That is, Cliff said that he felt a deep loss when George died too soon in 2001. It hurt more than I thought when I heard the news. I didn't see George every week or even every year, but he was always a part of my life. Not only as a Beatle did I respect him, but like a man who stayed true to himself. Cliff also thought about George's legacy of love and peace, which he thinks the modern music business has lost. He told us that songs shouldn't come from the charts, but from the heart. It's something I wish more young artists today knew. Cliff also said that he felt some envy for George's skill at stepping out of the glare. George was brave enough to say, "Enough is enough." I never quite got there. Could be that I loved acting too much, but I liked that he could go into his garden, play his music, and be himself. Cliff found her humility to be both motivating and maybe even a little scary. A reminder of how success can both free and lock people up. Cliff says that he is most thankful for his life of singing, faith, and friendship now that he is 85 years old. I'm glad I met him. The real George, not the Beatle or the image. The kind man who, just like everyone else, wanted to figure out what life was all about. He said with a little shaking voice, "We were two very different souls walking the same road, and I'll always be grateful for that connection." At the end of his life, Cliff Richard's thoughts on George Harrison show not only respect for another artist, but also a deep understanding of how people connect with each other that goes beyond fame, music, and even faith. The fact that they stayed friends for so long shows that they were both seek harmony, not just in their music, but in their lives as well. Now, with the honesty that comes with being old and wise, Cliff's words are a moving ode to a bond that lives on in the history of music.